Thank you very much, Taoiseach, Michael Gallagher, Joe Mulholland, and their team, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I'm very pleased and honored to be here today to officially open this prestigious and influential summer school. The main focus of my address is some of the things that mentioned by Michael, and I don't know whether he has seen my speech actually, but it is a reflection upon our two small but great nations and our connections for more than 1,000 years. While recognizing that a diplomat always should avoid entering into domestic politics in his or her host country, I will also try to avoid another trap contained in a quote from a former British diplomat and poet, Sir Henry Wotton. An ambassador is an honest man sent to lie abroad for his country. Denmark and Ireland have many things in common. We are small countries who have had to fight for our survival on the fringes of Europe. We are like-minded in many ways. We are both small, open economies. We adhere to free trade. We have a strong agricultural base. We are firm and committed supporters of the UN. We are donors of development aid in order to combat global poverty and combat climate change, to enhance democracy, rule of law and good governance, etc. But we're also different in some ways. Until 40 years ago, we followed different development paths due to geographical, historic, philosophical and cultural reasons. A common feature of both our societies is a traditionally strong influence of cooperatives and local voluntary work. Local activists, we call them fiery souls, are crucial for the functioning of our societies and for the survival of many institutions. Let me therefore pay tribute to Joe Mulholland and his colleagues for their huge efforts in keeping this summer school well and alive. I know it's a tough job, and let me just give you one example. On the 22nd of June, Joe sent me an email saying that the Taoiseach would be able to deliver his address today just after my opening. And the attached program to that mail was marked draft 14, and that is more than a month ago. So let me take this opportunity also to congratulate Emily O'Reilly, who will speak after me, for her, or later tonight, as being nominated as European Ombudsman. Danish-Irish bilateral relations date back a long time, as mentioned by Michael Gallagher. Next year we will, in April, celebrate here in Ireland the 1,000 years anniversary of the Battle of Clontarf. Some of my ancestors may have taken part or known someone who did. And many of the written sources show that there were Vikings on both sides in the battle. And in my family, we normally are to be found on the winning side. Let me, in this year of the gathering, also quote former President Mary Margalis, who during an official visit to Denmark in October 2010 said that the Vikings were the first tourists to Ireland, suffering from a bad press. And indeed they did, and they with some justification, I must say. They were violent and probably proud of being so. However, a new exhibition of Viking Age, currently on display in the Danish National Museum in Copenhagen, also demonstrates that they were good organizers, craftsmen, and their ships were second to none in those days, and in my view, still some of the most beautiful ever built. As also mentioned by Michael, we joined EU or EEC at the same time. We started in the same class at the same time, so to speak. And after 40 years, we have both benefited a lot. For most Danes, it was probably a marriage of convenience rather than of love, because it gave us the opportunity to overcome a problem which had faced us since the 1950s, namely that our two main export markets, Germany and the UK, belonged until then to two different trading blocs. Both Denmark and Ireland have had the pleasure and honor to chair the Council of Ministers of Europe 7 times and done so successfully. We have proven that small countries very often run the most efficient and productive presidencies because we have honest brokers having no hidden national agenda. So therefore may I just congratulate the Taoiseach, his government and the hard-working officials for the successful outcome of the 7th presidency in the first semester of this year. We Danes and Irish share the same kind of humor. We laugh over the same jokes and normally go along very well. We have values in common, but at the same time we also seem to have different approaches to a number of issues. This may have something to do with our different geographical positions and cultural influences over centuries. From time to time, our position in the northern top of continental Europe, at the entrance to the Baltic Sea, has placed her in the European power play, whether we like it or not. Just one example. In 1864, Denmark lost about 1/3 of her territory and almost half of the population in a war with Prussia. After World War I and after a referendum, the southernmost part of Jutland was returned to Denmark and the actual Danish-German border established. The defeat in 1864 left Denmark poor and in shock over the loss of territory and self-esteem. It is estimated that between 1864 and World War I, about 300,000 Danes emigrated, primarily to the US. At the same time, however, this shock, this defeat, these dramatic events also saw the start of some interesting and important changes in our society, in education, popular and industrial organizations, democratic structures, and institutions which lay the foundation for a society in which I was born and grew up. And on Tuesday, my friend and former colleague, Bo Lidegaard, will explain much better than I can how we are, why we are as we are, and how our present political system was built during the last 160 years. Some of you may have some insight into Danish politics from the TV drama Borgen. Actually, it has been quite flattering and somewhat surprising to witness the huge interest which Borgen has made in Ireland and in many other countries as well. Maybe the secret of this success is that although politics is often full of drama, it is not very often that TV drama is about politics. Could it also be because it's about a female prime minister? The creator of Borgen, Adam Prise is his name, has said in an interview that he believes that real-life female politicians and business leaders need to make greater sacrifices than their male counterparts to develop their careers. And we witnessed in Borgen that the prime minister had not very successful in her marriage and had difficult relationship with her children, at least for some time. And interestingly, in October 2011, about 1 year after Borgen was launched, we actually in Denmark got our first real-life female prime minister. So in this respect, fiction was ahead of real life. And maybe the right interest in Borgen was also the factor behind a feature of the Nordic countries last February in the British magazine The Economist, under the heading, "The Nordic countries are probably the best governed countries in the world." For someone like me who for 40 years have followed the writings and opinion of this liberal magazine, it was hard to believe such praise of highly taxed, social democratic inspired countries to the north of Europe. And I can tell you that the Danish political debate does not indicate that the opposition parties see Denmark as a best run country. But the Nordic countries, we have a lot in common, but we're also quite different. So what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the Nordic systems? According to The Economist, the Nordics are characterized by broad social trust, which means that generally citizens pay their taxes and play by the rules. Decisions are widely accepted. The state is quite popular, not because it's big, but because it works. You can inject market mechanisms into the welfare state to sharpen its performance in this way, The Economist said. But before we all decide to immigrate to the Nordic countries, let me just give you a few warnings. Everything is not perfect. Also, according to The Economist, public spending as proportion to GDP is probably not sustainable in the long term, since it is followed by similar high levels of taxation that may be too high for job creation in an ever more competitive global economy. And I know that is also a concern for my own government. Also, most social benefits are tax paid and rest on the social trust that I just mentioned, implying that taxpayers voluntarily pay high taxes to finance benefits to those less fortunate and those in need for various services. If such a system attracts too many, also from abroad, who want the benefits but are unable or unwilling to pay their fair share, then the system may prove difficult to sustain. So any political, social, and economic system is challenged nowadays. And what works well in one society may not function so well in another. But we can get inspiration from each other and see if we can adapt their solutions to suit our circumstances. A lot of the stuff within the European Union actually is about that, sharing best practices with our friends and fellow member states. After 3.5 years here now, I can see that Ireland probably will never become a high-tax country. Some of you may think you are high-tax, but then come to Denmark and say, we can beat you on any tax. According to a recent report from ESRI, however, you still have some way to go before Irish income taxes reach the average European level. Of course, it is up to any country to decide for itself of its mix of public spending and tax. In Denmark, we are, as I said, way above the European average regarding tax levels, and as just mentioned, this can create problems. But it's also our experience that if you tax and regulate intelligently, you can actually create business opportunities and jobs in the private sector as well as increase exports. Examples in our case are renewable energy, especially wind power, energy savings, environment and water, where we, over the last 30 years, have created a green economy and clean tech sector of quite impressive size. Our broad political objective is actually to become a fossil-free economy in 2050. And as we are no trees upon which money grows, the change has happened through a combination of both stick and carrot, that is regulation, subvention and taxes. It is now estimated that the green economy has created more than 100,000 jobs and export for more than 10 billion euro. Between 1980 and 2005, our GDP increased by 75%, with roughly unchanged energy consumption and a reduction in CO2 emissions. That is, we managed to decouple growth and energy consumption. So, what can we Danes learn from Ireland? Well, there's a lot, but Joe has asked me not to speak the whole evening, so I have just mentioned two things. First, what I'll call Irishness. It is really remarkable that 80 million people around the world are proud of their Irish roots and heritage. Irish music and dance have ever even more supporters, fans and followers. It made a huge impression on many Danes last year at the European Championship in football to witness the level of support of Irish fans singing the Fields of Athenry during the match against the later champions, Spain. Second, your capability of attracting foreign direct investments at such high level has not gone unnoticed in Danish government circles. We're very impressed by the amount of companies that have set up their base in Ireland and the number of jobs they have created. Now I come to the conclusion of my speech. I started with a quote about diplomats, of which there are many. I also have seen that even more about politicians and politics. And I've tried to find one which actually combined the both. And I found one by a Danish social reformer and government minister in the 1930s. And he said, nobody understands like a politician or a diplomat to be friendly with those he does not like. And just say on behalf of diplomats, it's not that we don't like people, but sometimes we have to deal with regimes we do not like. And what can Ireland learn from Denmark? Well, I'll leave that question to yourself to discuss and decide, having listened to Go on Tuesday. So thank you for your attention. Enjoy the presentations and discuss in the coming days. And I hereby declare the 33rd MacGill Summer School open.